Okay, so picture this. You're in a super important business meeting, totally rocking it, pitching your ideas in perfect English, or maybe you're just laughing and chatting with locals in some, amazing marketplace, like halfway across the world. That's kind of the dream, right? And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. You sent over this detailed guide on how to speak English confidently, and we're going to pull out all the best tips and tricks to get you there.
Yeah, it's interesting. What struck me is that this guide doesn't just jump into all these fancy tricks and stuff. It really focuses on building a strong foundation first. Like they say, real confidence comes from competence.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I guess you can't build a house without a solid foundation first. So let's talk about those core elements. The guide spends a lot of time on the kind of building blocks of language, like grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, almost like going back to basics. Is that really necessary for someone who wants to sound more confident? I mean,
Well, it might seem like taking a step back, but actually think of it this way. When you get those underlying structures of a language, how sentences work, how words connect, how sounds are actually produced, it gives you this sense of control. And that control leads to confidence. Instead of second-guessing yourself all the time, you can just speak with more certainty and clarity.
right. Yeah, I see what you mean. So it's not just about, memorizing all the rules. It's about understanding how the whole system fits together. But what about pronunciation? So many people I know are just so hung up on having a perfect accent, it kind of stops them from speaking at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the guide actually takes a really cool approach to this. They say that clear speech is more important than erasing your accent. It's about making sure people get what you're saying, not sounding like you were born somewhere else. One technique they suggest is shadowing native speakers. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Isn't that where you mimic someone?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a workout for your tongue and your ears. You just choose a short audio clip from a podcast or a movie, and you try to copy the speaker's rhythm, intonation, even the pauses.
Wow, so it's more than just getting the words right. It's like you're trying to capture the music of the language. That's really neat. Okay, but even with all the, grammar and pronunciation skills in the world, sometimes you just get those nerves. How does the guide deal with the mental side of things? Because I think for a lot of people, that fear is the biggest obstacle to confidence.
Oh, absolutely. And the guide tackles this head on. They acknowledge, those common fears like making mistakes, public speaking, not being understood. But the good news is they emphasize that you can actually manage these fears, even overcome them with the right mindset.
Okay, I'm listening. What kind of mindset shifts are we talking about here? Because it's easy to say just be more confident, but how do you actually make that happen?
Well, one of the most powerful tools they talk about is positive self-talk. Now, I know it might sound kind of cheesy, but stick with me. It's about, noticing those negative thoughts that creep in, like I'm going to mess this up, or people will judge my accent, and consciously swapping them out with positive ones.
So instead of I can't do this, it's more like I'm learning and I'm getting better every day kind of thing.
Bingo. It's about changing that inner voice from your worst critic to your biggest cheerleader. And you know what? It actually works. The more you focus on your progress, even those little wins, the more your confidence grows. And, speaking of small wins, I actually have a little story that shows this in action.
Ooh, a story from the expert themselves. I'm all ears.
Okay, so back when I was first learning English, I was terrified of speaking up in class, petrified. I was so worried about making mistakes and sounding stupid. But one day, I finally worked up the courage to ask a question. My heart was pounding, but I did it. And guess what? Not only did everyone understand me, but the teacher actually complimented my pronunciation.
Wow, that's amazing. What a confidence boost.
It totally was. And it taught me a valuable lesson. The more you push yourself out of your comfort zone, the more you realize those fears are often way bigger in our heads than they are in reality.
Right. It's like facing those fears kind of takes away their power. Okay, let's get practically. Beyond, this positive self-talk, what are some concrete strategies the guide recommends for building speaking confidence?
Honestly, one of the most straightforward and often overlooked pieces of advice is this: talk. Find any chance you can to actually speak English. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to happen.
So get out of your head and into the real world, put those skills to the test. But what if someone doesn't have many opportunities to speak English in their everyday life? How do they create those opportunities?
That's a great question, and the guide actually gives some really creative ideas. They suggest things like finding a language exchange partner, joining an online conversation group, heck, even just practicing with yourself.
Wait, practicing with yourself? How does that work?
I know it might sound weird, but it can be super effective. It can be something as simple as talking about your day, describing what you see, or even reading out loud from a book or article. The key is to get used to the sound of your own voice speaking English.
Oh, I see. It's like making your own little English-speaking world. I like it. But okay, let's go real. Even talking to yourself can feel kind of awkward sometimes, right?
Yeah, you're right, and the guide gets that. They actually recommend using a mirror when you practice.
The good old mirror technique, I've heard of that. It can be a little strange at first, but I can see how it would help.
It helps you become more aware of your body language, your facial expressions, even just like your overall presence when you speak. These nonverbal cues play a huge role in how confident you appear and how confident you actually feel.
It's like it's not just about the words, it's the whole package, right? This guide seems to be really well-rounded considering both the mental and the practical stuff.
Totally. It's about addressing both the mindset and the skills, and that's what leads to real, lasting, authentic confidence.
Now, I'm curious, does the guide just give general tips or does it dive into specific situations too?
You got it. They know that speaking confidently in a casual conversation is different from, say, nailing a job interview or giving a presentation. So they get super specific, offering advice tailored for different scenarios.
Awesome. Well, then let's jump into those specific situations and see what other gems we can find. We'll be right back to explore the guide's advice on conquering job interviews, presentations, and even travel. Don't go anywhere.
And we're back, ready to dig deeper into those like high-stakes situations where confident English can really make a difference. Like using this guide to actually achieve something.
Totally. And the guide jumped right into it with strategies for job interviews, presentations, even travel. I mean, these are situations that make almost anyone nervous, even native speakers. So I'm really curious what advice it gives.
What really emphasizes that you need to tailor your approach for each specific context. Like what works in a casual chat with friends might not fly in a formal job interview. You know what I mean?
Right, of course. So let's start with those job interviews. I think those are super scary for anyone, regardless of their language level. Like there's so much pressure to make a good impression and the stakes are high. How does the guide recommend handling that?
It stresses the importance of being really prepared and not just like brushing up on your English, but researching the company, understanding their values and their culture, and being able to say like why you'd be a good fit.
Yeah, that makes sense. It shows you're serious, you've done your homework, and you're actually interested in the opportunity.
Exactly. It's not just about answering questions the right way. It's about showing your enthusiasm, your knowledge, and proving you can communicate well. And one technique the guide suggests is creating an elevator pitch. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah, like that quick summary you can give someone to grab their attention.
Exactly. Like you've got to get their attention in those first few seconds, just like if you were in an elevator with them. It's about that first impression. And of course, practicing common interview questions is key. But the guide goes further. It says you should think about potential follow-up questions and even prepare for those curveballs.
So like being ready to think on your feet and adapt if the conversation goes in a different direction. It's about confidence in action, right?
You got it. Now, presentations, those are another big source of anxiety for a lot of people, even native English speakers. But the guide has some really solid strategies for beating stage fright and giving a presentation that people will actually want to listen to.
Ooh, tell me more. Because presentations can be nerve-wracking even in your own language. But adding that extra layer of speaking in a different language can feel like a whole other beast.
Yeah, for sure. One key thing they emphasize is structure, like having a clear outline, using visuals to help explain your points and practicing your delivery until it feels natural. Oh, and this is a tip I use all the time. Use pauses strategically.
Pauses, really? I feel like that would make things sound choppy and awkward.
Actually, if you do it right, pauses can be super powerful. They give the audience time to think about what you just said. They create a bit of suspense, and it gives you a moment to gather your thoughts and project that confidence. It's like the silence between the notes in music. It's just as important as the notes themselves.
Well, that's a great way to think about it. It shows that confident speaking isn't just about words. It's about those little details, the pacing, the tone, all those subtle things that make a big difference.
Exactly. Okay, now let's switch gears a bit and talk about travel. The guide has a whole section on using English confidently in new environments.
Yeah, that's so relevant for our listeners. Imagine being able to travel to a different country, connect with locals, and really experience a new culture all through English.
Right. And the guide encourages this mindset shift where you realize that perfection isn't necessary. Even just knowing a few basic phrases and saying them confidently with a smile can open up so many doors and help you make genuine connections.
It's about being adventurous and willing to step outside your comfort zone. Not letting the fear of making a mistake stop you from experiencing something amazing.
Exactly. And, the guide also reminds us to be aware of cultural differences. Like what's considered polite in one place might not be in another. So it's important to do a little research and be respectful.
It's not just about the language, but understanding those cultural nuances that shape communication. It's about being a good traveler.
Absolutely. One tip they give is to watch how locals interact with each other. Pay attention to their body language, their tone of voice, and those little nonverbal cues. It's a subtle but really effective way to understand the culture and adjust how you communicate.
It's like you're becoming a cultural chameleon, blending in and connecting with people on a deeper level.
Exactly. And they also talk about using technology to your advantage when you travel.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are so many awesome apps these days that can help you get around translate signs, even order food.
Technology can be a total lifesaver, especially when you're in a new place. But the guide says it's important to not rely on it too much. You still need to practice speaking with real people, have real conversations, and really immerse yourself in the language and culture.
Right. It's about finding that balance between tech and human interaction. Using technology as a tool, but not letting it become a crutch.
You nailed it. And something that keeps coming up as we talk about these different situations, job interviews, presentations, travel, it's this idea of continuous learning.
Yeah, that's so true. It's easy to think that once you reach a certain level of fluency, you're done. But learning a language is a lifelong journey, isn't it?
It totally is. The guide says that building confidence isn't about getting to some finish line. It's about the whole journey. It's about being curious, trying new things, and always expanding your skills and knowledge.
And it's about celebrating how far you've come and acknowledging all the effort you've put in. Because let's face it, learning a language takes serious dedication, persistence, and, a good amount of self-belief.
You got it. And that's what makes this guy so great. It not only gives you practical strategies, but it also encourages a mindset of growth, resilience, and being kind to yourself. It reminds you that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to feel frustrated sometimes. And it's okay to ask for help.
It's like it normalizes the struggle and reminds us that we're all in this together. And it gives you that push to keep going even when it's tough.
Exactly. And remember, even native English speakers mess up sometimes. Language is always changing, and there's always something new to learn.
One of the things that really stood out to me was this idea of embracing imperfection. It's so freeing to know that you don't have to be perfect.
Couldn't agree more. And that's where celebrating those small wins is so important. Did you order your coffee in English this morning? Did you understand a whole episode of your favorite podcast? Give yourself a pat on the back. Those little victories, no matter how small, keep you motivated and keep you going.
It's about shifting your focus from what you haven't done yet to what you have achieved. And that can be super powerful.
For sure. And, the guide also talks about the importance of doing a good support system.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Having people who understand what you're going through, whether it's a language exchange partner, an online community, or a local group, can make a world of difference. It's like having a whole cheerleading squad rooting for you even when you stumble.
And don't forget to actually enjoy the process. Learning English shouldn't feel like a chore. Find topics that interest you, watch movies, listen to music, and let your passion for the language drive you forward.
It's like finding that perfect balance between learning and having fun, because when you're genuinely interested, you're more likely to keep at it, push through the tough times, and really reach your full potential.
You said it. And, as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. Close your eyes for a sec and imagine yourself a year from now. You've been using these strategies, you've embraced the ups and downs of learning, and you've built that confident mindset. Now step into that future version of yourself. What does it feel like to speak English easily and confidently? What doors have opened up for you? What opportunities have you been able to grab because of it?
That's such a powerful visualization exercise. It reminds us that all the effort we put in today can lead to amazing things down the road.
Absolutely. And we've covered so much in this deep dive, but there's still more to explore. We'll be back in a jiffy to uncover even more practical tips and techniques that'll help you speak English confidently. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we're back, and I gotta say, this guide has been really insightful. It's not just about, grammar and vocab. It's about like a whole new way of thinking.
Totally. We've talked about that strong foundation, facing those mental hurdles, and finding that learning style that you actually enjoy. But you know what brings it all together?
What's that?
Action.
Right? Like you could have all the ingredients for a cake, but it's not going to magically bake itself. So how do we go from knowing stuff to actually doing it? Especially if it feels a little intimidating.
Well, the guy has this great tip. Start small. Don't try to do everything at once. Break those big goals down into tiny steps. Like maybe record yourself speaking for just a minute or two every day. Or practice a few phrases in the mirror.
Oh yeah, like those fitness challenges where you start slow and gradually build up your strength over time. Small, consistent actions get big results, right?
You got it. And don't be afraid to try different things. See what works for you. Maybe one day you're shadowing a scene from your favorite movie. The next you're chatting with a language partner.
It's all about finding what keeps you motivated and excited to learn. Because, learning a language, it can be a long process. There will be moments of frustration times when you feel stuck, days when you just don't want to practice.
And that's totally normal. The guide emphasizes that setbacks are a natural part of learning. What matters is how you deal with them. Do you let them stop you, or do you use them to grow?
That's where that resilient mindset comes in, right? Seeing those stumbles as stepping stones, as feedback that helps you get back on track.
Exactly. And remember, even native English speakers make mistakes all the time. Language is constantly changing, so there's always room to learn and improve.
One of my biggest takeaways from this whole deep dive is this idea of embracing imperfection. It's so freeing to realize that it's not about being perfect.
Absolutely. It's about progress, not perfection. And that's why it's important to celebrate those small wins. Did you order your coffee in English today? Did you understand a whole episode of your favorite podcast? That's awesome. Celebrate it. Those little victories keep you going.
It's about focusing on what you've already accomplished instead of what you haven't. That can be super motivating.
Totally. And don't underestimate the power of having people around you who support you. Whether it's a language exchange partner, an online group, or a local club, connecting with others who are learning too can make a huge difference. It's like having your own personal cheer squad.
Yeah, it's like having a team of people who get it. They're there to encourage you even when it gets tough.
Exactly. And most importantly, don't forget to enjoy the process. Learning English shouldn't feel like a chore. Find things that interest you, watch movies, listen to music, and let your passion for the language guide you.
So it's about making learning fun, right? Because when you're genuinely interested, you're more likely to stick with it and reach your goals.
You got it. All right, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. Close your eyes for a second and imagine yourself a year from now. You've been putting these strategies into action, you've embraced the ups and downs, and you've developed that confident mindset. Now step into that future you. What's it like to speak English effortlessly and confidently? What new doors have opened for you? What amazing opportunities have you been able to take advantage of?
That's such a great way to end this conversation. It's a powerful reminder that the effort we put in today can have such a positive impact on our future, and that the possibilities that come with speaking English confidently are truly endless. So keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in yourself. You got this.